Page. Okay. Dharma, are we good to go?
Yeah, Abhishek.
Okay. Karan, we are good to go. You welcome all. Introduce the speaker and hand over to Mr. Bansal.
All right, I'll get that done. Let's kick things off then. Right, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you all might be. It's good to have all of you here in the room with us. My name is Karan Karai. I welcome you all on behalf of the Economic Times to this webinar where we'll be closely scrutinizing business agility in what has become a COVID-tinged reality for all of us. If the pace of the pre-coronavirus world was already fast, the luxury of time now seems to have disappeared completely. Businesses that once mapped digital strategy in 1 to 3 year phases must now scale their initiatives in a matter of what is days or even weeks. The COVID-19 crisis seemingly provides a sudden glimpse into what only we call a future world, one in which digital has become central to every interaction. And it's forcing organizations and individuals further up the adoption curve almost overnight. It's a world in which digital channels become the primary and in some cases the sole customer engagement model. And automated processes become a primary driver of productivity, the basis of flexible, transparent, and stable supply chains. So a world in which agile ways of working are a prerequisite to meeting seemingly daily changes to customer behavior is now largely the norm. If one were to look for silver linings in all of this, it might be in the falling barriers to improvisation and experimentation that have emerged across stakeholders. And in this unique moment, companies can learn and progress more quickly than ever before. The ways they learn from and they adjust to today's crisis will deeply influence their performance in tomorrow's changed world. And this provides an opportunity to all stakeholders. Those that are successfully able to make gains stick will likely be more successful during the recovery and beyond when compared to their peers. Now is as good a time as ever to reassess your digital initiatives, those that provide near-term help to employees, to customers, to the broad set of stakeholders to which businesses are increasingly responsible, and those that position you for a post-crisis world. In this reality, some things will snap back to previous form while others will be forever changed. So playing it safe now is understandable, but while you might feel the need to do so, it's often the worst option to do so. Every company knows how to pilot new digital initiatives in normal times, but this is far from normal, as we all know. And very few have the means to do so at scale and at speed as suddenly required by this pandemic. That's because in normal times, the market penalties for all of this is not too high, whereas it's pretty steep now. And the finance department, for example, has to keep a tight hold of funds needed to move initiatives forward quickly. So that is one of so many concerns across an organization-wide basis. Customers are often slow to adjust to new ways of doing things, with traditional adoption curves reflecting this inherent inertia. And organizational culture, with its deeply grooved silos, hinders agility and collaboration. So as a result, we see companies experimenting at a pace that fails to match the rate of change around them. It slows their ability to learn fast enough to keep up. And additionally, they don't often embrace the bold action needed to move quickly from piloting an initiative to scaling the most successful ones. It's a challenging time, no doubt. And the question no longer is whether organizations should really digitize, but rather, how can they deliver a transformation that best prepares them to handle these uncertain times and to create opportunities from this crisis? To ponder these questions and much more, we have with us a power-packed lineup of speakers who will be deliberating on evolving business dynamics, what digital transformation truly means for organizations, supply chain strategies in a COVID era, and of course, agile business continuity plans. So all of this coming together will be steered by Akhil Bansal, who is the Deputy CEO of KPMG in India. Thanks for being with us, Akhil. Akhil assists the CEO in running the firm. He is responsible for service delivery, for strategy implementation, strategic growth initiatives, and infrastructure, and is also a board member of KPMG in India. He has over 25 years of international and domestic experience in various aspects of audit and enterprise risk management, business processes, strategy, and he's worked closely with several prominent Indian business houses as well as multinational groups over the course of his professional career. The format for today's session will be a 45-minute discussion with all of our speakers, followed by a short 15-minute Q&A. I request everybody who's tuned in now to please mention the speaker name they are posing the question to when they pop the question into the chat box that is there alongside this Zoom session. And so on that note, without much further ado, I hand things over to you, Akhil, to take things forward.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be hosting this session by Economic Times on a very relevant topic. Is digital the answer to economic progress post the pandemic? And we have such a fantastic panel. We have leaders from industries which are very well connected with technology, more connected with technology than others, from industrial automation, digital and ERP solutions, healthcare, energy, and automotive. Thank you everyone for joining in on this panel, and a very, very warm welcome to each one of you. Talking about COVID-19, I don't think we have had any topic like this which has been talked about as much as this topic with such a frequency in a very, very long time. And it's actually nobody's fault, actually. This is probably the single biggest fragility test that mankind ever has to face. We are witnessing an answer to the question, and a question we never asked. And the question was, what would happen if the economic activity comes to a grinding halt for a couple of months, right? The question we could not even visualize, we got answer to that. And particularly look at from India's perspective, an economy which was growing at the rate of 6 to 7% per annum. And we were debating whether 6 to 7% per annum is a good rate of growth, or we need to get into a double-digit growth of 10% plus to achieve our $5 trillion economy vision. This year, we may be shrinking, and we may be shrinking 3 to 8%. I mean, most people predict 3%, and it can reach up to minus 8% if second wave of the pandemic happens. More people are saying 3%, but while these agencies are very credible agencies who have the process, who have the tool, who have the method to predict such a thing, but I can tell you this is still just an estimate with a high degree of uncertainty. As the lockdown eases and we welcome to see the full impact of the pandemic, one basic thing which we have realized that our old ways of operating needs to be relooked at. And most important of such realization is the need to embrace digital. The consumer adoption of digital has been very rapid in India, even in a pre-COVID scenario. And more so in last few months, we have seen good progress as far as consumer behavior is concerned, whether it is UPI for payments or delivery services, communication, or even entertainment in last couple of months. But it's on the enterprise side where the pace has not been as rapid as we would have loved to see in India. If I refer to a report done by International Federation of Robotics, annual installation of industrial robotics in India was 4,800 in 2018. While the total robotic installation in the Asia-Australia region was 283,000. And out of that 283,000, 154,000 was alone done by China. So 154,000 on one side and 4,800 on another side. So that's the big difference between India and China. The question is COVID going to change that? In some of the report which we have also done as KPMG, the trends toward digitization has got a pair of new wings for sure. Whichever sector we look at it, whether we look at energy, which is undergoing changes, operational efficiency, renewables, acceleration of technology adoption, whether we look at healthcare, digital healthcare, smart consumer, adoption of artificial intelligence and robotics and surgery, and even diagnostic, as we call it, healthcare 3.0. Automotive going towards more EVs and more software-driven vehicles, whether enterprise solution will become inevitable part of every organization. It's clear that India needs to go towards automation and digital across all streams. The question is that how fast can we do that, and that's what we need to explore in today's discussion. I would seek the thought process, on the possible implication of COVID on technological innovations from our panelists. I would also like to touch upon the possible reasons for slower adoption of industrial technology in India. We will try to understand the technology adoption journey each one of them have gone through, and most importantly, how do they look forward. I'm fortunate to have Datta, the MD of Robert Bosch, Sindhu, MD of SAP Labs, Sangeeta, Joint MD Apollo Hospitals, Saurabh Kumar, MD EESL, and Stefan from Excite. Great to have you all, guys, but without further ado, if I can start the discussion, and in no particular order, I would start just asking questions. If I may start with you, Datta, as a technology company that you provide digital solutions to your customers, whether it's I 4.0, connected mobility, or digital smart energy meters. What was the impact you and your customer faced during the lockdown?
Well, I think, thanks, Akhil. Very interesting topic. Let's say, if you look at Bosch is a dominant mobility player. COVID or not, we were impacted anyways. Mobility had a structural change in the last few years. So we are preparing for a new mobility order world over. So while this was happening, COVID was a double whammy effect for us. So mobility, clearly there's a huge impact. But the good thing about what we do out of India is that some of the forward-looking new programs that are happening with our clients around the world are not being called off, because these are very, very significant, very, very strategic engineering projects, which are very, very critical for the future of mobility. So while some of the current business scenarios of mobility companies are showing a different trend, these engineering projects, which is going to redefine mobility as we go forward, they do continue. So as a company, for me, clearly this quantum of engineering work that we do for our clients world over hasn't come down, which is a good sign for India as an engineering destination, and as also a good sign for business continuity in the engineering space. Of course, Saurabh would also second this. Some of the digital programs in India, like energy meters that we are working with EESL, would of course be impacted because there's nobody who can travel, who can reach out, containment zones, etc. But it's going to come back. These are fundamental shifts in the way India is getting digital. So these are not transactions, I'm sure.
Yeah, great. Sangeeta, if I may come to you, when you look at the healthcare industry, we never talked about healthcare as much as we do because of COVID. But when I look at healthcare industry, there are two contrasting facets I see. I mean, when I look at the private sector, you guys have done a great job. In a short span of time, whether, especially in the last decade and a half, how technology has been adopted, the quality of healthcare has been enhanced, even to the point that India has become a medical tourism hub. But at the same time, when I look at the public healthcare, which is used by a much larger size of population vis-a-vis people using the private sector healthcare, it's a laggard, least to say. How do you see going forward this renewed realization due to COVID on the importance of technology, that overall healthcare sector will transform in India?
So Akhil, it's a vast subject and an equally, vast question. I think the realm of care needs to be understood. I assume we're not talking in the COVID scenario alone, but talking comprehensively. And therefore, care is actually emergency, primary, secondary, and tertiary. And care is moving to treat what was earlier India's biggest problem was infectious disease, but is now non-communicable disease has actually outbeaten the infectious disease. And this entire morbidity scenario is compounded by, areas of poor sanitation, lack of nutrition, and then lack of access to healthcare. So we really need a comprehensive rethink, a strengthening of the primary healthcare system, an acknowledgement of the role of private healthcare and how more viable PPP models can enable greater access for individuals. Because at the end of the day, I think anybody in a healthcare system, the three fundamentals remain the same. We need high quality care. We need accessible care, which is geographically and financially accessible. And you need affordable care, that people should be able to afford it. So this combination of insurance, a focus on primary healthcare, and an underpinning of research, data, analytics, and the efficiency that IT and digital bring are really the kind of a framework for the future of healthcare. Jumping straight in, I think there are enough examples of areas where IT has been transformational. Now, whether it is our ability to do a teleconsult, so consultation reaches unreached villages, and actually we started telemedicine almost 20 years ago. We've completed over 10 million consults, but now I think what is exciting is the rapid pace of adoption. If you look at the country, we have about 800,000 doctors. Say 600,000 of them are active, about 500,000 of those 600,000 are general practitioners or internal medicine. Today, over 15 to 17% of them have already adopted digital. So this is a huge swing. And it's estimated that we can, look forward to them enabling about 2.5 million hours of teleconsults over the next few months, so that we have a new window or a new umbrella to treat and cure and care. And care has always been, very hospital-centric, but care is moving from the hospital to the clinics, from the clinics to the home, and from home to a 24/7 accessible, ubiquitous access to care, which is enabled by the mobile phone, by the type of networks we have, by data standardization, and a digitally savvy consumer and a physician. And then the beauty is that now this is going even further. It's moving from pure teleconsults that everybody's talking about to tele-ICU, which again we've been doing for a few years. In this hospital where I am right now in Hyderabad, we handle over 400 ICU beds, which are not in this building. The building has about 120 ICU beds, but you add 400 to that through the ICU telecommand station. These kind of models of care are going to become more and more available, more and more acceptable, because it's well acknowledged there's a shortage of critical care doctors. There's a need, and needs now may balloon or escalate in a completely different manner. So having digital readiness is a methodology for our future readiness for anything, because unfortunately now we are witnessing live real time what we only saw in science fiction movies. We would never have imagined what's happening in terms of a virus literally bringing us to our knees, the whole world. And so this is the time for us to collaborate, to innovate, to adopt, and to adopt at speed, and to adopt in a manner and a mechanism that we keep the individual in mind. I think what were the lessons we've learned during this period? So the power is going to be, if the lessons we learned during this period then become lessons that we keep and use towards what is potentially a bigger pandemic, which is non-communicable disease. Because the growth of cardiac, cancer, all these have not gone away. And so if we anchor the lessons that we've learned and apply them towards preventive healthcare, strengthening of primary healthcare, I think that would be, a good value which has come out of a really difficult scenario.
Yeah.
So with this, I mean, let talk to the others, and then I'm happy to pitch in some more if I didn't cover. But the just last line, I think 2 additional transformational features which are accelerating this is not just the good connectivity and the savviness of consumer and doctor, but digital devices, point of care testing, connected environments, IoT or medical IoT. All these are going to be a very critical part of this transformation. And I believe what it will enable us to do is to just get proactive about healthcare rather than reactive about healthcare. And in the immediate context, I'm happy to say that, I'm sorry, I have to add this one more point, which is the huge learning capability, because to learn in a short time, the ventilator training program that we've put up. First, the COVID lesson or the set of the course was studied by over 190,000 people in over 27 countries. But now the ventilator training program that we've put, which has content, simulator, and an individual, a buddy system, so that a new user to ventilators is mentored by an intensive care specialist who may not be physically sitting there, but is available to give advice. So these type of combination and quick learning models, and our team put that one together in under 40 days. So it's things like this which I think are going to be transformational in our immediate crisis handling and very, very enabling in terms of our ability to handle the future health problems.
That's very, very interesting, Sangeeta. If I may just add a quick question to what I asked. You talked about those movies which we could, we could see only in movies. Now we can see in reality. India still has 140 crore, approximately that population. Which year would you say that, by that year, every person of the 140 crore will have access to a great medical facility? 2050, 2060?
See, this is an amazing question, and I think we need to kind of put it in layers. Like I said, we need the insurance layer, which enables access. We need to strengthen our primary healthcare, and then we need to enable emergency and tertiary healthcare access. I strongly believe that if we work together, we actually have a large net of private sector hospitals which can do more if financial access is enabled. We have a large number of people who are capable, who would do telemedicine if we put those networks together. We must look at continuum of care, in addition to the strengthening of primary healthcare and the prevention aspect of care. So I believe we can do a fairly good access to care and universal healthcare model by the year 2025 if we really put this together. So I'm taking a bet on that number.
I'm sure the Prime Minister would love your answer when you say 2025, and I'm keeping my finger crossed for that.
And I'm working on it as well, not just talking about it.
Absolutely. Moving on to you, Sindhu, how do you see digital transforming the way work is being done going forward? And how do you think digital will help drive collaboration, cost efficiencies, and employee experience?
Yeah, thank you, Akhil. And first of all, a warm welcome also from my side. It's great to be on this esteemed panel today. I hope you can hear me well, Akhil.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so that's a very good question. And I guess that's a question that's debated and discussed pretty much in many of these panels. Let me begin by saying that First of all, and I think it's been said by Datta, it's also been said by Sangeeta as well, that we have to absolutely accept the reality that is staring at us in our face, right? That digital technologies really have a very profound impact when it comes to pretty much every industry, any business. I mean, we just talked about varied industry verticals just in the last few minutes. And I think we all agree that digital not only transforms the way products and services are being delivered, but also in the way those products and services are being consumed. And today, if you ask me, digital technologies are connecting people, the internet, as well as the physical world like we have never done before. And there are so many discussions, debates, controversial arguments as well in terms of how technology is really affecting jobs, how it's affecting wages, how it is affecting inequality, the health. We just talked about that, resource efficiency, security, all these aspects. And in fact, these changes are altering the world in so drastically. And I think it's also key to say that organizations who do not undergo this kind of a transformation almost cease to be existent pretty soon, right? Which also translates into this transformation, meaning that all spheres of your business needs to integrate digital. It's not just about products and services. And sometimes this can turn into a very scary thought for many of them, especially if you look at some of the sectors. But the truth is, this is almost an inevitability. So to remain in business, I think companies clearly, there's many examples out there, need to embrace digital transformation, and there's no avoiding it, like I said. But at the same time, I think it's also important to understand that digital transformation is, like I said, is not just about your products and services, but it's also about the culture in your organization. It's also about the processes that you have within your organization. It's also about the kind of technologies that you're willing to adopt and also go ahead with, even if it is not completely proven in your organization. And so becoming a digital organization is not just about digital products and services, but also going back into your core business processes, your core operating models, your core operations, and how do you leverage technology also for those aspects of your business. And very importantly, when I talked about culture, never underestimate the power of how the people transformation piece is also in this journey, right? Because it's important that you complement your overall digital transformation with also the culture piece, the people transformation piece, because that is what is going to fuel it and keep that innovation going and always ahead of the curve. So in my view, digitalization plays a very crucial role in developing solutions for the future. I think there's great examples, some which were also talked about today. Like if I just look at also SAP, we bring in AI. If you talk about reducing bias in even a process like hiring or recruitment, or if you look at technologies like blockchain, there's immense potential when you look at how we can add trust to or traceability through various parts of your supply chain, supporting your manufacturers, your consumers, your regulators, all at different parts of that process. And I can go on and on about examples from SAP in terms of how organizations have also understood this wave and how they're also transforming themselves for this kind of growth. I recollect recently a conversation with one of the largest European home appliance manufacturer that I was just talking to a few months back, and who, instead of just selling standalone appliances, I got reminded of the example because Sangeeta was talking about managing beds which are not even in the hospital. And very similarly, right? So they're selling standalone appliances and in the past, and now they're looking into how they're offering connected lifestyle experiences. And that's the kind of transformation that we're talking about. And this is only possible by combining your appliance, your product, your services, your customer data, and then kind of identifying what are those value added services that your customers really need. And through digitalization, Akhil, it's very clear that we can really build these kind of models. So like this organization that I just referred to now goes fully into an appliance as a service model as compared to selling appliances that they were doing in the past. So many such examples, and absolutely I'd like to summarize with digitalization and with leveraging some of the emerging technology. Many of these are possible, but not to forget also the people transformation piece that is very critical.
Yeah, that's a very important point, but I get encouraged by the adoption of mobile phones in India. Nobody could have visualized when the mobile phone was introduced in 97, 98, that almost every Indian will be carrying a mobile phone within a 2 decades or so. So I think this people transformation, it's something I think India has done pretty well in the past, and I'm sure will do that. So Stefan, if I can come to you, you have spent a good time in Europe. I would be quite keen to understand your perspective, sort of outside in view, on how automation is approached in India vis-a-vis more developed European market, and especially in your sector.
Right. Well, that's a good one. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for this round table without a table. I've spent about a year and a half now in India. I live in Ahmedabad, and I think I can only comment to your question related to my own activity, which is battery manufacturing, and more specifically lithium-ion battery. From my observation, Europe is probably more focused on automation. Maybe that's also because the market there is a little bit older for lithium-ion batteries, but still, I have the feeling that it's going to take a little bit more time we go towards automation and digitization of battery production here, lithium-ion battery production. I think the reflex here is that, why would I automate? Because labor is cheap. And I can just put more people and that'll fix my problem, and I don't have to spend all this money up front. But automation obviously is about a lot more than cost of labor. It's about quality, accuracy of production. There's a good amount of things that we do that just is not possible without automation. Precision, the amount of material that you use, the productivity that you can expect. I mean, a robot can work 24/7 if you like, even during the worst COVID times, if you keep feeding it with material. You can avoid labor shortage, you can improve safety. Let's not forget safety. So there's a lot of I think culturally people look at automation a bit differently here, and the numbers that you've indicated in the beginning basically underpin that. So I see a lot more manual operation, and at our plant we also do manual assembly, but then we will still invest in camera inspection systems and projectors that display little movie clips on how to do the job. When we set up our production lines when we had them designed, very typical, you go to a production line manufacturer and he asks you, give me a product design and I'll make you the production line. I said, I'm not going to give any designs to you. Maybe I'll give you 100, but definitely not one. And so, oh, that's a problem for me, because usually if I make a production line, it has to be to build a product. And I said, no, I will not give you a product, because if I give you a product, you'll make the line only for that. And we need to be more flexible and, be able to be agile in this fast growing but young market. And then of course, I'm going a little bit backwards, going from automation to manual. And then in India, there's this third level of innovation and manufacturing. That's the Jugaad fashion, if I can use that word. That's quite an important layer here. So outside in, yes, I'm sure it exists in Europe as well. But I would say that in general, we would invest faster in automation from a safety and quality and precision point of view.
I'm so glad you have already learned about Jugaad in India.
It was the first word I learned.
That's the innovative thinking we have in India. So I'm glad to hear that. Saurabh, if I can come to you, in a pre-COVID period, your organization EESL was in news for rolling out more than 1 million smart meters across various states in the country. What's your outlook for this program in the post-COVID period?
Thanks, Akhil, and it's a pleasure to be part of this very distinguished panel. Can you hear me, Akhil?
Yes, we can hear you. Please.
I think, as the Honorable Prime Minister continues to say that every challenge is an opportunity, and I think this 2 months, and I'm specifically addressing your question about the smart meters, where just before the lockdown, we had done about 1.4 million smart meters in a few cities in UP, some places in Bihar, Haryana, as well as Delhi. And I think what happened during those 2 months, and it is still going on, has actually led people to realize that there is no other way out if you want power sector to come out of it, COVID or no COVID. So let me tell you what, and I'm giving you statistics. In NDMC area of Delhi, which is the central Delhi area, over the last 2 months, 100% billing has been happening. 100%, I mean, almost 90-95% collection has been happening, right? Just compare it to the other 3 distribution companies, all private, whether it is South Delhi or they are asking consumers to go and click a photo of their meter readings and do a self-assessment of which not many people are doing. So this is the first thing, because NDMC is completely digital. Take the example of UP. UP, we have about 1 million smart meters and almost 20 times more the normal meter. We have issued 95% bills based on actual usage. No contact, nothing. It's all coming online. People have paid virtually everything. On the other hand, the other distribution companies, 70% of billing has happened, and that too provisional. There are problems in the billing. There are complaints. Somebody's got a 5 lakh bill. He's a laborer, so on and so forth. And let me also quickly tell you about Bihar. I mean, we all say that Bihar is among slightly not very developed state, but let me tell you, the power sector in Bihar is far ahead of perhaps most of the states in the country. There we have done prepaid smart meters, very much like your prepaid mobile phones. Not a large number, and we have done this in semi-urban areas. 25,000 prepaid smart meters existed before the lockdown. Every single day, the Bihar Discom is earning 5 lakh rupees from these prepaid smart meters. So I think it clearly showed that COVID or no COVID, of course, if there are extraordinary situations like this, our contactless service is perhaps the best. But more than that, on this 1.4 million meters that we have installed, the average increase in revenue per month per meter is 300 rupees. And we are only charging anywhere between 70 to 100 rupees per month per meter. And that's why you see in the financial reform package that has just been announced, the 90,000 crore by the Ministry of Power, and the entire slew of reform measures that the Honorable Finance Minister announced. The thing in common is mandatory prepaid smart metering, and we are very proud and happy that at least the distinguishing factor during this time was this.
Yeah, thank you, Saurabh. I come from South Delhi. I can tell you that I paid my bills. Fortunately, I was on a direct payment for many years, so it automatically gets paid. So I am paying my electricity bill. But if I can just stretch the question, besides the smart metering, What are the other digital initiatives your company or Ministry of Power is planning, especially on some of these challenges put by this pandemic?
Okay, Akhil, I'll first talk about myself. I mean, we are a relatively young company, and young both in terms of our the day we were created. We just celebrated our 10 years. So what we have done is that all our programs, right from the LED bulb program, the Ujala program, till every program, everything is digitized. For example, if you go to our website, the Ujala dashboard, as it's called, every single LED bulb sold anywhere in the country, we were able to record it because we used technology from day one. We manage 11 million street lights in the country, and all the street lights are geotagged. They communicate, and we are able to control all these street lights remotely. Similar is the case with the EV charging facilities, public charging facilities that we had. Even during the pandemic, we were able to serve whichever consumer wanted to have their charging. Of course, not many people were able to use it. So we have adopted digitization in all our processes. Also, just before the lockdown, it just so happened that we completely went digital even for our internal processes as well. So that also really helped. As far as I know about the Ministry of Power, I think another very big program on smart metering is coming out, which will be completely digital. And also, it is one of the few ministries, and you may have read in the newspapers in Delhi, which has gone completely on e-office. So that's something very high on our agenda, not necessarily because of any concerns of pandemic before it actually hit us, but just that we wanted to be efficient. We wanted to make sure that we don't increase our personnel liability beyond a particular point when we can do things digitally, when we can manage things digitally.
Thank you, Saurabh. Datta, if I can pick up the same point with you, I know Bosch has been involved in smart metering and energy utility projects in India. What are your thoughts in general on industrial automation and in particular about energy solutions in India?
Yes, I think we are privileged to work with Saurabh and his team on the Smart Energy Meter project. While this is quite early stages, looking at the size of the opportunity, like 250 million meters around the country, and the power of such a digital transformation, it's immense if you look at it as a country. And we are really excited to be part of this project with Saurabh's team. But when I look at adoption of digital in industry in India, because I work with clients in India, I work with the big Bosch, 80 billion euro company around the world, and also the customers who are spread around India, spread around the world. I think one thought that comes to my mind about why the digital adoption in India is yet to take off is I think the cost of ownership, and there's a perennial debate about cost of ownership of technology and return on investments. I think this is very normal to have such a debate. It's a very obvious debate for any enterprise. But I think the paradigm shift that India would need is basically the ownership will shift from on-premise to SaaS platforms, and the ownership would eventually have to come down for a country like India, because I think nobody is 100% sure of outcomes and the benefits that one would get immediately out of the digital initiatives. While long-term it's very clear, strategic very clear, but immediate return on investments, it's a bit fuzzy. So people should not take decisions only based on cost of ownership of technology. I would see more hyper-local SaaS platforms coming up for many IoT applications, even in telemedicine, healthcare, agriculture, even for enterprise, which is going to speed up the adoption of technology in India. I just give you one example. You look at, we are talking of machine telematics. 80% of the manufacturing activity in India is through small and medium enterprises. Small and medium enterprises obviously cannot afford the ownership of IT exclusively, right? So if you build a platform of machine telematics to get the data of machines on a common platform and provide most vital outcomes back to them in a what you can call as affordable industry 4.0 startup, I think you will see a jump in hygiene adoption of technology in India. So can we do it at scale with architectures which are relevant for Indian market is something we as industry need to address. The wave one, if you look at of IT and other forms of technology which came from predominantly from US or some things from Germany, this was more, let's say, an adoption of technology which was created elsewhere to India. But when you look at what's required for India to really jumpstart the technology adoption, we will have to have architectures which are relevant for the country, looking at the culture that is that's here. And I think that's a very important role we as some of the technology industry players are going to play here. So that's already begun, and I would see a lot of action around that space.
Great. If I can ask you a cheeky question, what percentage of product engineering will become digital in future? And when I say future, I mean next, say, 3 years or so.
You're asking, you're preaching to a pope. So basically, I would say the software dominance in a product is going to be massive. The technology was at the back of a product in the past. Now technology will be in the front of a product. So we at Bosch, we think we will have a very dominant software content in every product that we offer to the market. You call it service, you call it even a physical product. If a physical product is not connected and it is not cognizant, we may not have such a product in future at all. So that's a fundamental principle with which we are designing a product, any product that we do.
Just on a lighter note, I don't know what will happen to the privacy after that, but that's probably the future.
Privilege and privacy, will compensate one another.
Right. Sangeeta, one thing which has been in my mind, and that's not from the supply side, but from the customer perspective. If we look at the healthcare in the past also, things like those wearable came into picture. Everybody started monitoring their health on a personal level. And this COVID is actually pushing the boundaries. People have started having a oxygen can at home, the oximeter, and all these things are starting. How do you visualize the consumer behavior change in the healthcare industry from that perspective?
So if you talk about it from the beginning, I think the fact that customers will begin to take more responsibility for their care. They will be proactive and they will be very educated. I think the amount of dialogue from remdesivir to anticoagulants to steroids, the customers just becoming so much smarter about all the options available. So the first trend, I think, is awareness. The second is proactive. The third is the ability to use science appropriately and to ask for these type of solutions. So break away from the traditional mold of go sit and see my doctor and things like that. And I think it's transformational and it's exciting. See, for now, very early into the COVID scenario, we realized that there's going to be a shortage of beds. We had figured out that many of the COVID patients are going to be either asymptomatic or needing quarantine. Indian homes typically are not completely capable, and for many people, of isolating. You may have the intent to self-isolate, but if 7 people are, sharing one room or 2 rooms or a single bathroom, it's very difficult to do so. So we put together a solution called Stay Isolated. We partnered with hotels. We were able to announce 500 rooms, to start with, and scale this to 1,000, and ultimately, we are ready to scale this up to 5,000 rooms. But the differentiation is this is not just hotel rooms where you stay isolated. This has a telemedicine overlay. So they download the app, we do a testing, and in the current scenario, whether it's a temperature control or a pulse oximetry, these are the two critical aspects of forewarning items. These are now being given to the individual, not remotely, but you have to do it physically. But very soon, like I said, the whole world of Internet of Medical Things is evolving at a tremendous pace. And so in that environment, I very much, clearly visualize a mirror that's going to talk to you. A lot of your bathroom will be, related to immediate diagnosis. And a patient is going to be, or an individual who's not a patient. And, hopefully we're going to have a lot less patients when this vision pans out, because you will be proactively monitoring your health, checking your blood pressure, checking your cholesterol, checking different parameters in your samples, so that at the slightest aberration, you get onto a video consult call with your doctor. He will look at your personal health record. The personal health record will have your variations, and he'll say, look, something's not right. Let's get your diet going. Let's up your medication dose. And this will include data from the environment. Is the pollen count higher? Does an asthma patient need to be more careful? Is there an impending cardiac, because you're wearing a small monitoring agency, and your ECG is getting remotely sent to a central monitoring system which has an artificial intelligence layer on top. So you may be playing golf, but the ambulance has been moved because you have an impending heart attack. These scenarios, which sound like science fiction, are going to happen definitely in the next decade, but possibly in the next 2 to 3 years. All this is evolving. So the important thing is speed. The important thing is appropriateness of care without being intrusive. The critical factor is appreciating that artificial intelligence in healthcare is actually assisted intelligence, because the doctor remains at the core of what is happening. You cannot algorithmize everything in healthcare. This will help a doctor stay up to date, stay in touch. And this new ecosystem which is evolving, with the individual in the center, enabled by the mobile phone, supported by this connected care environments, is going to enable one of the most important things, which is early detection. Today in India, 70% of our cardiac patients come to us with 3 vessels, 4 vessels blocked. Where were they when the first vessel got blocked? Even more serious and sad is that our cancer patients come to us in stage 3 and stage 4. Why couldn't we proactively be testing so that we find them in stage 1? This is the era, this is the model that I look forward to and will actively work towards.
Sure. Certainly, when it comes to the early assessment, somebody told me that with early assessment and advancement of technology in medical, kids who are getting born right now will probably live 150 plus years. So good life for everyone. Sindhu, what?
All of us are going to be living a lot longer. So I think the important message is to make sure that you live healthy.
Healthy, yes. That's more important.
Just life extension is not enough.
Yeah, that's right.
Quality of life maintenance is really the key.
Yeah, that's the another thing they say, that 70 is new 60 and new 60 is new 50. So that's important. Sindhu, from SAP perspective, given this COVID, are you already planning some changes which you need to bring into your solutions, into your products, which will take care of pandemics or a situation like this?
Yeah. First of all, I want to start off by saying that I feel very young suddenly.
Well, you look very young, Sindhu.
Thank you, Sangeeta. So to your question, Akhil, I think all of you know that 76% of the world's business transactions touch an SAP system, right? So always our continued growth has been attributed to relentless innovation, a very diverse portfolio across, like I mentioned earlier on, 25 plus industries. Also our ability to anticipate ever-changing customer requirements, and also a very broad ecosystem of partners. And a lot of what we've been doing, and if you just ask me in terms of how we have been defining the next generation of ERP, if you may will, is all about co-innovation, looking into the very specific industries that we work out of, and also creating this kind of digital core, as we call it, that connects every aspect of your business. And this includes, of course, things that we are dealing with and talking about today, a lot of the examples that was referred to earlier on as well. And if you just look at SAP and how we have kind of transformed ERP and the market of ERP, and if you just look back in terms of how ERP systems were first developed back in the 60s, right? So it was all about controlling your inventory. It's all about controlling your basic manufacturing processes. And as a pioneer in this space, we've absolutely been at the forefront of driving how the future of ERP systems evolve and continue to stay fully abreast when it comes to also infusion of technologies that we all talked about. And so, and I also mentioned earlier on as well, today, if you look at organizations and a lot of the 400,000 organizations that we work with across the globe, everybody is looking at new business models, looking at integrated end-to-end business processes. And so when you talk about a modern ERP and when you talk about what SAP is all about in terms of these changing times, the modern ERP is at the core of this kind of a transformational shift, right? So for us, we've also moved our ERP development. I think earlier on, the comments were made about moving from on-premise to the cloud and so on, and in terms of cost-effective ways in which you can consume our solutions. And this is also powered by this switch of our operating models to the cloud, allowing for organizations to access data, make data a lot more affordable. And I'm talking about enterprise data here. And we've also made the transformational steps in terms of how our development processes, also our release processes are in place in order to kind of support this kind of growth and this kind of agility. But at the same time, always with a very stringent focus on quality, using practices, be it agile, be it CI, CD, DevOps, and so on. And so if you ask me, there are three kind of drivers, and this is even prior to COVID, we've always had these three drivers that has always kind of helped us stay focused and also determine the chart when it comes to the future of ERP. The first one is about consumerization. And if you look at today in terms of how the user experience is changing, if you just look at the younger generation, if you may will, of ERP users, they really want easy to use systems. They really want to have access to data when they want it. Also, the whole aspect of collaboration for multi-teams becomes super important. Also, customization on the dashboard level, very easy to make suggestions as well as comments. All this becomes a key part when we talk about consumerization of ERP. The second thing is mobility. I think it's very clear today across the organization, even across different levels of the organization, we all prefer mobile devices and mobile devices even to access enterprise data. And in an unexpected...
I stopped the video.
Sorry?
Yeah, no, please go on.
Okay, so what I was saying is the second one is about mobility and how across levels of the organization, we need to have access to the data. And particularly when we talk about also remote working teams like now what we have, or even part-time workers coming in or contract workers coming in, there's a huge demand when we talk about ERP software to be available, accessible, as well as operational on the go. So this is the second aspect which has driven us. And the third driver is business intelligence, right? Because it's really about access to data and being able to use that data to drive those changes, make those critical decisions for your business, work alongside with your customers to be able to very quickly in an agile manner also kind of pivot and change depending on the needs. And that can only be done with access to data and intelligent data at that, right? And so this is also important. And here, in order to support that, of course, we talked about technologies, be it AI or machine learning. And here, when you combine it with ERP systems, you're talking about also leveraging advanced analytics. You're talking about greater workflow automation possibilities. You're talking about very intelligent user interfaces and forecasts that allow you to do such things. And so overall, if you ask me, this also helps us to kind of compete differently and also focus on aspects which today suddenly become super important, like focusing on aspects like also sustainability, which is also key. So in summary, Akhil, I'm thoroughly convinced that creating an intelligent enterprise and helping customers, giving them a framework of how they can turn their enterprises into true intelligent enterprises, which has always been at the core of SAP's vision and strategy, is absolutely the first step when we talk about a very sustainable organization. With COVID, without COVID, this is at the core of it, right? And this is also why I'm always very upbeat to also reflect on all the things that we're doing at SAP today.
I'm sure. Great. One quick question I would like to ask to both Stefan and Saurabh, and this is because, in this COVID period, 4 things came very handy: food, clothes, internet, and power. And power has to be in both from the grid as well as in the energy storage space. I mean, without that, we would have had tough time during this time. So what are the 2 or 3 things, Stefan, Saurabh, that we can expect which will get transformed in, in the next 1 year or so in your sector? And sorry, any one of you who wants to take the lead.
Saurabh, you go first, because without energy, there's no point in energy storage.
Okay, let me come in. Very briefly, we have taken this opportunity and tried to put together an intervention which will help rural India, and I'll tell you why rural India, because it's so much of migration going back. What is needed is strengthening rural infrastructure. So we have put together a very innovative program where we are installing decentralized solar plants near the villages in their vacant land, and we have done about 100 megawatt already decentralized at about 70 places in the state of Maharashtra. We have proposed to them that we'll add battery storage to those plants, and also replace or put together street lights, almost 2.8 million in rural areas of Maharashtra. Also, if you recollect, there's a scheme called Kusum, where the government of India was planning to provide some incentives, to change over pumping, because agriculture pumping is a very, very high energy consuming activity. So in this model that we call convergence, we hope that in the next 1 to 2 years, 500 megawatt hour of storage with around 3 gigawatts of decentralized solar with nearly 4 to 5 million rural street lights is what we are going to do. We think it is going to help rural infrastructure, give them quality power and clean power, and also maybe reduce the problems of the grid in that area.
That's a great program. Stefan, over to you.
Well, I think when it comes to emerging technologies, there's no technology without a market for it, right? So you always need to look at both, in my opinion. Specifically to lithium-ion batteries, there's a couple of areas where it's being worked on, and I'm excluding cost and price because that will follow automatically the other innovations. I'm seeing a better what we call active to passive ratio. So a battery system always has mechanical components and electrical stuff and thermal management components, and they don't contribute to the energy storage as such. They're supporting technologies. Now we're seeing more and more of the actives taking a bigger piece of the pie of the cost, which is great. So that's an area where we see technologically advancements. Of course, higher energy densities through better chemistries or better cell construction technology, safer technology. I don't want to go into electrochemistry and all that. That wouldn't be appropriate. But of course, you've heard of solid state and silicon graphite and all of those technologies. There's a lot of innovation going on and a tremendous amount of money being pumped in lithium-ion battery research. And if you think of it, it's a quite relatively young technology. And then last but not least, I would say sustainability, both on the start of the chain of manufacturing, where material selection becomes important, trying to avoid the cobalts and the other scarce materials. And also at the end of the chain, the recycling. There's still very little, as far as I'm aware, activity in terms of lithium-ion battery recycling within India. I'm pretty sure, well, I hear the buzz, of course, that advancements on that are being made as well. So those are all technological. And the nice thing about electrochemical energy storage is that it works with a metal, whether it is a lead acid battery or a lithium-ion battery. There's always a metal there. Metals, you can melt and you can extract them again and you can use them over and over again and they don't lose their properties. So the only thing you need to do is do it efficiently and with as little less scrap as possible. So recycling is very important to make that whole cycle sustainable. And in terms of markets, India is a market where solar plus storage, of course, is quite popular. But there's, if you look at it from a global scale, so many other markets where battery storage is being used when it comes to frequency regulation and peak shaving and power control. There are very few, the markets for that in India are extremely small. So they need to be developed more to create more stable distribution networks and transmission networks. That's going to take some time and probably some PPP operation. I'm expecting that is going to get more attention from the government because they can't do it all themselves and the private. As we just heard, and I confirm, I think more and more distributed generation and therefore distributed storage. I mean, the storage will follow where the distribution goes, right? So, or where the production goes, sorry. And in terms of I think that's it. In the SS, those markets will further develop and will drive technology.
Okay. Okay, thank you. If it was my way, I could have continued this forever and asked maybe 100 more questions, but I'm just conscious of time. There are a few questions which have come from audience. This one is from Mr. Vijay Dubey, Path Enterprises. He says there seems to be some reluctance on part of SME and MSME in terms of adopting Industrial 4.0 initiative. Cost and knowledge could be a factor. So any one of you who want to comment on this?
Sorry, reluctance on what?
On the part of MSME and SME to adopt Industry 4.0 initiative.
Industry 4.0 initiative, okay. So I think, and as part of FICCI, one of the important things or important areas we're focusing on is MSME. And the fact is, India is, estimated to have 6 crore MSMEs. So this is a tremendous number. These are micro industries. These are small individual entrepreneurs. These are household type environments. And the overall organized sector in the MSME is under 20,000 in terms of number. But this tribe is growing. But I think in the question itself was the crux of the answer. And that is that it's all about skilling, training. It's some level also about enabling, because they are working on small margins on a day-to-day business and don't really have the time, the luxury of time to step back and reinvent or reimagine. And so this is one thing that FICCI is working with. We've already set up one center of excellence in West Bengal on identifying opportunities, on training and upskilling and helping MSMEs to grow and develop. We're also doing another one, which is called the Greater 50%, which is focused around women MSMEs. So there are many initiatives in the Greater 50%, but one of it is to help women entrepreneurs identify appropriate technologies, new opportunities, and learn new skill sets. But having said that, I think it's very important for us to include the whole startup ecosystem in the consideration stack when we talk about Indian MSME. And there, I think the default mode is Industry 4.0. There's digitization, there's the latest technologies, and somewhere these two are going to converge. And it's for us to find ways to partner, to adopt. I think large industries must work very creatively with their MSMEs and help take the time and trouble to teach and train them on new techniques. And I believe it will serve larger companies very well in the medium and long term to think partnership and think collaboration and think innovative new methodologies rather than just vendor relationships. So the answers lie everywhere.
Yeah, and it is certainly very important for MSME to move forward on this. Otherwise, India as a country will not be able to move forward.
Absolutely.
The other question that comes is strength of any business in innovation. But most digital transformation start with high aspiration for a step change in performance, but it stumbles somewhere. Datta, this question is for you. How can we avoid its pitfall?
Well, there's no formula for digital transformation. So there's no template which is created. I'm sure there was templates which were created for ERP implementation, but for digital transformation, big part is belief system and cultural change. It's not a simple IT implementation. So it's a change of belief system and change of enterprise for future. So there are no templates. It has to be embedded in the incumbent culture of the enterprise. So people there are best practices which you can borrow, but it has to be orchestrated in the native culture of the enterprise. So there are no shortcuts for it.
Right.
And maybe to add to what Datta just said, I think there are well-established practices like design thinking methodologies where you really get to the table. I mean, today we can't get to the table, but even in this kind of a virtual mode, where you can kind of first determine what is the outcome that you want to achieve, who's the target personas for those outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And I think it's super important that not to get overwhelmed, but to see those very quicker and more agile ways of getting to smaller outcomes, determining success, showing the success, and not waiting for the full thing to emerge. I think this is also key for success in a lot of the digital transformation efforts that I've seen, because as you go, you also see trends emerge and new user interaction points that get determined in those kind of conversations, which also help you to kind of take those steps forward. And I think that methodology of agile, being quick, being very much in sync with your customers, whoever be it, right? And working with them is also key to success in many of the digital transformation projects.
Yeah. Sangeeta, there is one more question for you. It says how digital platform can be made more affordable to all people when the basic needs like quality healthcare is still a debatable point. All these digital initiatives will only make sense if the quality of life improves. Quality in government-run hospitals is still a far cry, wherein private hospital is costly. Not sounding pessimistic, digital initiative will be viable in this country only when the basic needs, infrastructure are met by the government.
So I think if we had a national health service that afforded an entire digital network or a framework and public and private used it together, this would be one of the best things, because you would enable data sharing, you would enable continuum of care, you would, many advantages of the value of data. However, I think it's important for us to kind of say the same agile methodology that Sindhu was talking about is, keep doing small projects and incrementally move towards a larger direction, because healthcare is a huge subject and 1.3 billion people are 1/6 of the world population. So to really cover this entirely with one large scheme is difficult. So I think Ayushman Bharat is one significant one. Baked into the Ayushman Bharat health insurance coverage was another scheme that many people didn't really fully appreciate, but this is the health and wellness centers of the government. And to really execute them, I'm really happy to say that over the last 5 years, 4 years, we've now managed over 500 primary healthcare centers for the government. And in this one, we have a complete digital overlay. First, we put simple biometric systems so you can assure that all the doctors arrive and be there where they're supposed to be. But it went on to do a clinical decision support system. So this doctor who hadn't been retrained in the last 15 years now has the capability of an Apollo clinical care pathway. We enable telemedicine, so if a doctor doesn't come or you need a second opinion, he can do so immediately using telemedicine. So this type of using digital, thinking proactive, having a PPP model and addressing primary healthcare while we keep upgrading secondary and tertiary and do VICUs, all these are kind of concurrent processes and improvement steps in a framework of universal access, which is private insurance, government paid insurance, all coming together with a single ideology that the whole country should be covered. And everyone should be confident or secure that they can walk into a facility and use an insurance to enable access to care. And this is not some new age rocket thinking. This is what countries all over the world are already doing. So I think we need to play a little catch up in terms of universal coverage. We definitely need to grow our basic infrastructure, but we should grow that using all the new knowledge that we have of embedded digital, of proactive preventive healthcare, of new methodologies of training, because manpower, skill set, and women power in healthcare is a huge shortage. So we need to scale that. There's a lot to be done, but I just want to leave you all on a very positive note. That I think a country that managed to keep the death rate of COVID at the current, 2.3, 2.4, while the world average is above 4, I think it's a country that's capable of a lot. Yeah. Of a country that had no PPEs, but is now manufacturing over 300,000 PPEs a day. So if we set our minds to it, we are capable of doing it. We just need to work together. We shouldn't have had to have a COVID crisis to make health the central topic of this country. But if it remains a central topic, I'm very encouraged by the vision that we will save more lives. We will keep our children, our women healthy when they go into pregnancy. We will prevent heart disease. We will find cancer early. And we can potentially set the agenda and the blueprint for healthcare for the world, because already we know that people from all over the world come out to seek healthcare in India through medical value travel. On the strength of our pharmaceutical industry and the skill set of our doctors, we are a significant player in healthcare. We need to scale it and we need to build it so that it's accessible for our whole country. But I still have hope. After 36 years of working in the health sector, I'm still as enthusiastic and as positive, because every day we're getting a little better. And I do have that belief that in our lifetime, we will see universal access for our country.
Yeah, very, very well said. And God willing, we will come out of this COVID situation more positive than the rest of the world, and technology will continue to be adopted. I'm just conscious of time. This has been a fantastic discussion, very interesting from my perspective. Thank you very much to all of you. Can I hand it over back to you, Team ET? Karan?
I like the way you're handling it, Akhil. They're leaving it with you.
Okay, in that case, it's an extreme pleasure to have met all of you, and thank you so much for your comments and for the knowledge you have shared. Certainly very enlightening and across so many sectors. It was a complete delight, pleasure for me to have hosted this. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you all the participants for joining in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Akhil.
Nice to have met you all. All the best and bye-bye. Stay safe. Be careful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, I think most of them are logging also, it's fine.